All right, hey, welcome to another episode of Crypto with English. So today's theme is going to be about resiliency as far as cryptocurrency and DeFi and resiliency. So how can cryptocurrency keep the financial system running in spite of things like wars, crises, natural disasters, and other related crises that kind of turn society upside on its head? So I'd like to introduce to you all the two co-founders of TechWaves. They specialize in public relations and content creation in the DeFi and cryptocurrency space. So, Nika Dmitriadi, Sonia Bobrik, thank you very much for coming on to the show. And Sonia, this is the second time you've been on my show, so thank you again. So, how are you both doing?
Thank you.
We are great, thank you. The weather on our side is the best, and we are really
Yeah,
happy.
I think
Okay. Yes.
nevertheless, what's going on now in the crypto market and the overall world situation, we always say because crisis management is one of our key specialties when working with our clients. We always say, Sonia says, and I completely agree with her, that each crisis is an opportunity, and it depends on you how you're going to deal with it. You can
Right.
always turn it into opportunity, or you can regard it as a problem and look at it as a problem. So yeah.
Right.
Crisis, this time where you can always be the best when other companies, for example, in panic. So you can use this time to be better.
Right.
Yeah, because some companies step back and they're afraid and they're trying to work their strategies. They're trying to maybe cut some expenses. They are, for example, cut some employees, but that's not how we operate. So we believe that being united and being even optimistic, being believers and dreamers is going to help us in any situation, no matter what happens next.
Right, and I think that's a very good philosophy that you both have for your company. And like you both said, I think a lot of times the reflex for many companies, and this could even be this can be in Web3 related or otherwise. It's like, oh, things are hard. Time to start, kicking people out. But as far as good companies that come to mind, those are the ones that have a very, very strong and resilient, philosophy, and it's a type where people want to stay. And I think the company as a whole, becomes stronger that way. So I think that's great that you both are following that type of belief, so to say, because it's very easy to react when you're scared, and in life in general, and I think often it's that reaction that leads to more mistakes. So it kind of makes you wonder when, let's say, companies start, you know, when they just start laying off people, so to say, at the first moments. I guess the first bit of evidence of something bad happening. If the first instinct is to start letting go people, you don't really know the extent of how good that decision is. And by the way, what other problems you might be causing in the meantime for yourself, let's say as the company, by kind of always, reacting, in that fashion. And besides, it's like, you may be letting off some very, very good people in the process as well. And those people might be the ones that actually may be best suited for a crisis. And speaking of crises, one of the things that became very obvious to people is actually how reliable and how resilient and strong the crypto and DeFi system is. You saw with as we are currently seeing and will continue to see for a while, unfortunately, with the war in Ukraine, how essentially the traditional banking systems, unfortunately, they tend to be very vulnerable targets, during times of war. It's going to be very hard for people to pull their money out of banks when, let's say, troops are in your city, getting, bombarded by, various, bombs and artillery and things like that. And one of the ways a lot of the, Ukrainian, resistance fighters have actually received resources is actually through cryptocurrency, through various, donations, across the world. So if you two can kind of talk about that as far as cryptocurrency, the markets, and how they function as some sort of like protection in really uncertain, you could say emergency-like times.
Yeah, sure thing. That's the topic we'd like to discuss because we see how important crypto now in these new conditions in the situation when banks stop working and the only hope for people is to find an alternative source of funding that is not affiliated, that can be protected from third parties and even security. So
Right.
yeah, Sonia, would you like to start? Because I think you have many ideas regarding this.
Yeah, I have my own example about crypto and banks. So for example, crypto really saved me because thanks for this I can send money, for example, for my relatives to Russia. I
Yeah.
can use decentralized payment services and crypto exchanges to exchange, for example, euro to rubles, crypto to rubles, and etc. And it's a really good chance for people like me who has relatives, for example, in Russia, and you can use decentralized technologies to send money, and
Yeah.
it's really nice in this situation.
Yeah, and how are your relatives doing? In Russia, because especially I think nowadays with the escalation of the war in Ukraine, I've at least here, I've seen footage where you could say government troops are, being very, very hyper violent and aggressive to any and all types of protests, mass censorship, and you could say um, over restriction of certain types of news that's getting in as well. So I think I would imagine, and I would imagine in many senses too, people are just kind of suffering across the board. I think regardless of where you are.
Okay. Um, could you repeat please your question?
Yeah, sorry, that was a little bit of a loaded question. I kind of ramble a little
What's the
bit, but no,
question
I
and
was actually I was really
again?
just asking how your relatives are doing. As they are based in Russia right now, and especially in the middle of this conflict where it's just kind of crazy everywhere.
Yeah, actually, they're fine, but the situation in the country not good. Prices, for example, in groceries rised into times, and I remember that I heard a conversation between two old women that they don't have money for enough money for food, for paying their apartments, and for living
Wow.
in general. So yeah, it's
And
um,
here's the moment that I would like to add to. As you said, and it's completely correct, Russians are limited in their right to fully report on what's going on in the country. And that's why we are limited in Sonia, with Sonia as well, because for us it's important to stay neutral, not to be overwhelmed about overall situation,
Sure.
to keep working, to not to be constantly under stress, and that's why we try to stay away from the situation. We are in contact with our relatives. We
Yeah.
constantly talk to them to be able to know that they are okay and they're fine. We're also sharing some funds with them so that they always have enough money to keep living and to have comfort life. But yeah, talking about protests, maybe I would say that one day common sense will win. One day it will win. And I think it's more than enough. And it's the best thing we can say now because politicians are politicians.
Sure.
I hope they know what they are doing on both sides. So let's leave it to them. For us, with our family, it's completely fine. We keep working
Right.
and we're happy for them. And I believe that in the end, for example, now we're in Europe and now we're in Montenegro, and we see how Ukrainians and Russians and Belarusians are constantly in contact. They speak the
Yeah.
same language. And each day when we walk on the street, we see Ukrainians and we see they are not aggressive. And we understand that Russians are not aggressive as well. So the whole situation is not about people. It's more about maybe wrong decisions of authorities. But that's what we cannot judge just because we don't know all the details. So yeah, being
Yeah.
neutral in this case is the best tactics to keep working and to stay safe, probably, because sometimes we prefer not to spread information about it, to be sure that we're not spreading any fake news, because sometimes it's better to stay silent or just to wait for the right facts, for verified information, not to be a source of fake news, because the truth will always be revealed and there's no way it's going to be hidden in the end. That's our position. That's what I wanted to add.
Sure. And as far as projects that you both have coming up, what are some things you'll be working on? You know, between now and let's say later this year, and 2022 is going to be another very consequential, interesting year for cryptocurrency with NFTs, metaverse projects, and all the other things in DeFi. Bitcoin and most of the crypto market has taken a serious beating, as they say. I don't think that's really going to ultimately deter a lot of people as far as participating in this. But as far as projects, yeah, what are you both working on?
Sonia?
Uh, um, what's type of projects we are working on
Yeah,
now?
Yeah, our businesses, our companies, our dear partners.
Yeah, we're most focused on NFTs projects now and decentralized social media. So we are we are we are seeing a big potential in NFTs and decentralization, and we see new ways in investment. For example, we have a project where you can invest in your favorite artists, musicians, and get profits from it.
very
So
nice.
Yeah,
yeah,
and such projects is for us is a good idea. First, yeah, to be honest, I'm a huge believer in censorship resistant social networks. I seriously
Right,
believe that that's what we should be heading to, because many people are so much motivated by Musk's decision to buy Twitter, but at the same
right,
time we see critics, and to be honest, I'm a huge critic of this decision, just because when there is so much power in one person's hands, chances are he can act emotionally, and each of his steps can lead to so many consequences, and maybe the face of Twitter is going to be changed fundamentally in the nearest future. So that's why, for example, we work with initiatives that are aimed to help people to build their own censorship resistant networks.
right,
And what we mean by that is that people, this is like true Web3, where people are interacting with each other, and basically they are the ones who are really creating the internet, or like
right,
who are forming the landscape on the internet, who are capable of posting everything, but exists like self-regulation, and self-regulation regarding social networks, that's what we actually believe in, because if authorities or Elon Musk is in charge of any social media, yeah, as I said, chances are it's not going to be that like that open-minded, and chances are people will not have so much rights and will not have the right to say something honestly. And
Sure.
yes, speaking about NFTs, yeah, that's why I wanted to add. We believe that supporting such projects, cultural projects, is a good idea in this new reality, because when people are constantly scrolling through Instagram or any like news websites, they're overwhelmed with all situations. They are stressed out.
Sure.
And we will focus more on culture and supporting, for example, artists from minorities or traditionally underserved artists who couldn't be so much represented in media previously. I think that's a good thing to do in this new reality where culture may be overlooked because of this.
Sure. And you raised some good points there, and I would say this: I think if anybody was in the position of, let's say, an Elon Musk, I think if it's me or the both of you that ran Twitter, oh yeah, I know, right? Imagine that. But it is almost certain that at some point, either my biases or opinions or yours will
Yeah,
eventually creep up into it. It's just human nature, so to say. And I think as far as human nature goes, I think if any of us had that type of, let's say, net worth and wealth and capital, you know, um, I don't see why somebody wouldn't, let's say, want to, let's say, buy Twitter and maybe, let's say, recreate it as they would, as they would see fit. Like, for instance, like, I love like 1980s action movies, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. You know what? I probably, if I own Twitter, I probably want to promote more of Schwarzenegger and Stallone's content. I'm not kidding about that. They're classics in my opinion. But like even something as like kind of silly as that, even that has consequences, as
sure
well.
thing. And I
So,
just
Yeah.
imagine, for example, as I see if Sonia, I'm just interested. How would you react if you, for example, saw one day that Wall Street Journal writes Sonia Bobrik posts strange content on her page? Let's unfollow her. If you were capable of blocking the whole Twitter, what would you do?
Yeah, but I heard about recreating Twitter. I think it's my own opinion. It's not recreating. It's about control people and control them and tell them how they have to think about something and how to what they uh, and how can they think and what they can do in situations like in the world, like Elon Musk say, let's do that, and people, yeah, yeah, and we can do that, we can say that, and it's about control. I think it's not about open-minded and etc.
Yeah,
right.
it's
It's
like
like
he set the
opinion.
standards. For example, he at any point he could set standards for posts on Twitter. He would say, I like to cut symbols so that tweet is even shorter," and that it looks possible. It looks like now it looks like a potential outcome, like a reality, like something that could potentially happen, and yeah, so
Yeah,
he could
yeah,
probably form the whole network.
yeah, sorry. We saw this situation with Dogecoin, for example,
Well, yeah, I was going to
and
mention that. Yeah.
so um, yeah, so it's what I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he,
mean,
he
I think Dogecoin is probably going to do better. I guess as far as Elon Musk running Twitter, and I've also read recently that there's been some hiccups as far as I guess you could say the complete, you could say almost takeover as far as his role in Twitter. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out. But I think it ultimately goes to human nature. I think all of us, we're all either guilty or vulnerable to this, but our opinions, our feelings, our biases will eventually creep in if we control it. And it kind of makes you wonder if you want to make something truly, you can almost say either democratic or completely neutral or completely like a pure free speech type of platform. It makes you wonder, wouldn't it make sense to actually put Twitter and essentially migrate it onto some sort of blockchain platform, make it completely decentralized with nodes, and essentially you could have you could actually have a governance utility, either crypto or NFT token, where literally the users could just decide themselves as far as what content they want and what content they don't want. Like I would say, if Twitter was to really be pure and you could say absent of any type of personal bias, decentralize it then.
Mhm.
Put it across a decentralized network of nodes and literally let the people decide. I think that is probably the closest way to make it that type of pure free speech, free thinking type of platform where nobody could control it, based on, their beliefs or feelings.
Hmm. Yeah, and I personally believe, to be honest, that to create such like perfect shaped social media networks, we should start from scratch. Because I personally, we are constantly like it's a part of our specialization. It's a huge part of what we're doing, what we
Right.
do on a daily basis. We constantly brainstorming with Sonia. We're constantly creating topics. Like each day starts with a bunch of topics like what we should talk about today. And it starts in our social media accounts, and we're pitching
Sure.
different topics to different journalists. We're trying to surprise them in any way, even though sometimes it's completely impossible to surprise them because they seen it all. And one of the topics was like who will win in this race to Web3? Would it be centralized social networks or decentralized social networks? And I personally, maybe Sonia will future this in the future disagree with me. Let's see what she says. But I personally believe that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram won't change. So if we're speaking about Web3, we should start from scratch and we should create brand new social networks, because centralized teams behind with centralized philosophy who are standing behind centralized networks won't
Right.
allow won't allow these social media networks to be completely decentralized. I just don't really believe that people who like this concept, who are profiting from this centralized concept, would like that idea, would like the idea of completely transparent social media. And Sonia, what,
Right.
what do you think about it?
Um, I think that it will be good if we have in the same time Twitter, Facebook, and Web3, so we can compare what is the best for us. Because now we can know what is the best, because we don't have this Web3 internet,
Right.
and can only imagine how it will be. So um, that's my opinion, and I think we can wait for it, and one day we got what we want.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I think you both raise a good point about Twitter, Instagram, and more of these type of centralized type of social media platforms. I think ultimately, they're more of a product of Web 2, but if they're fundamentally at its core Web 2 centralized type platforms, but if let's say they have the technology of some of the Web 3 type stuff, there's still a Web 2 centralized platform at the end of the day. I think these have been around for like 10 plus years. So I don't think the actual structure is going to change. And I'm very excited to see as far as what new platforms are going to come out of this
Yeah.
Web3 era that we're living in. So if let's say everything is eventually going to migrate onto the metaverse, it's kind of nice if you have your own avatar, almost your own little character, essentially, to move through this kind of like sandbox type of video game, like environment where, like, listen, if you're actually messaging somebody like a DM, I mean, I can imagine it's like your character walking up to that person, maybe with like a letter or something like that, and that kind of represents like a DM or something like that. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I can imagine that new Web3, it's like new social media where you can be you virtual.
Yeah.
uh like it's only my
Right.
impression, but I think it can be in the future.
Right.
I think I will spend whole day just changing my avatars. I would be, yeah. I don't know.
Right.
I really spend weeks choosing my avatar. I would take it too seriously, I guess.
Yeah, well, especially as, as technology gets better over time, I mean, there's going to be probably near endless amount of options for people to customize their avatar. This could be from, I mean, basic things from just outfits and clothes to, you know, hairstyle and voice and eye color and stuff like that. I mean, I would imagine like, that could be like a really long process to create, kind of the avatar that you want, especially if you wanted to represent you, so to say. Yeah, I mean, this is literally, I think, much of our lives, if not near all of it, will be gamified at some point. It's looking that way.
Yeah, definitely. And what I believe that the power of decentralized social networks, just I know we changed a bit the topic, but looking back on what you asked first about how could crypto keep the financial system running in situations like crisis, natural disasters, and wars, of course. I'd say that it would be great to have such a social network now in these realities. So because there are many things that people on both sides can tell each other, and
Yeah.
if they had such a channel, they where they could express their opinions and say what they actually think without moderation, it would be great, because I think that people are the only one who can solve this problem, because when they stop believing in the nature of war, when they stop regarding war as a tool, as a solution, it's going to end one day. And yeah, so I believe when third parties leave the process of funding, for example, this is where independence starts on both ends.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And kind of touching on Elon Musk again, and I think you mentioned Dogecoin earlier as well. You know, as I think promising as it may seem to a lot of people, as far as let's say Elon Musk taking the helm and essentially being the leadership of Twitter, I don't think that he's essentially going to allow every bit and all forms of news to go through. Like I said, it goes back to human nature. So, like, let's say, for instance, if there was some sort of whistleblower situation within Tesla, let's say, and by the way, this is hypothetical, but,
Mhm.
but if there was a whistleblower situation where, let's say, somebody had some sort of research and they released it onto social media saying, this model of car explodes every time you turn it on.
Yeah,
um or not even if it just doesn't explode, but let's say this model of car, the hood lights on fire every
Mhm.
5 times you turn this on. I would imagine that, let's say, if that is on Twitter, I can't imagine a situation where, let's say, his team is like, okay, we're just going to leave it there. We'll let the algorithms promote this, to the front so everybody can see this, because there's a lot of, shareholders and money behind all this. There's also a lot of legal teams and a lot of attorneys behind this as well. So I would imagine, at the very least, they're going to want to, buy themselves some time to at least kind of
Mhm.
fix the problem, or at least fix the perception of the problem, rather than just kind of like, okay, we're just going to let this circulate and let people retweet this and let people comment on this. You know, uh, it's like I said, I think we're all a victim, or all subject to our own biases. So, if that was the case, so to say, you know, I would say, even just to protect the bottom line for the company,
Mhm.
some sort of like brief shadow banning, or something along those lines for that little piece of news, because I think eventually everybody's going to know anyway. But I would imagine, just from a pure strategy point of view, he would want to, kind of mute that for a little
Hmm.
bit, so to say.
I believe, and I guess because yesterday we discussed this situation with Sonia, by the way. We because now we're, by the way, are looking into different crisis management strategies. And
Right.
what we believe is that, what I believe, maybe Sonia changed her opinion, but I believe that he has an excellent PR team, and that PR team for sure would spread the opposite information at the same time.
Sure.
For example, they would find some insiders who are interested in buying Tesla shares for like minimum price, and they would say, they're trying to spread this information to drop the price and to
Right.
profit from that. Be cautious. That's what I think would happen, because if he has such power, and he if he has so much money, then probably he's going to be creative about like showing that his social network is as free as it was, but at the same
Right. I
time
see what you mean.
covering information he wouldn't like to appear there. Sonia, what do you think about it? How would he act in your opinion?
Um, I think that people who has such power like Elon Musk, they can regulate the market in general. So such to tell someone that something will happen, but it can be happen, but people in panic start to withdraw their money, or tell others to withdraw, and the market is crashing because of it.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe oh, okay. Yeah, it's like the current situation with Luna. After
Right.
looking into the articles, because because our partners are partnering with some companies who relied on Luna, and after looking into details, just like to know the story of this crisis, to understand its reasons. We looked into some reports and found out it's easy as it was before, even in classic finance and traditional financial markets. It just always starts with panic, and somebody says like, oh my gosh, they are withdrawing their money, they are trying to transfer a lot of money, they are leaving these assets, they let's leave it behind too. And it always like it starts because it always starts with panic, and panic like is the worst market's enemy, as we see it now, as we saw it before. So,
Right.
and maybe this is, I agree with Sony, this is a true power. True power is not about money, it's not even about having like huge team of lawyers, or for example buying social media. It's about the power of trust, because if people trust you, or if they look up to you, if they trust your opinion, and if they regard you as an influencer, as the one who is capable of making world changing decisions, they're going to believe you, and each word you say they're going to believe. And if he starts panic, this panic may spread easily.
Right. Yeah, it kind of becomes like a wildfire, so to say. And I think as you saw with the Luna situation as well, these things have ripples, and these things have, primary, secondary, effects. And I think without a doubt, when something as catastrophic as Luna's price,
Yeah.
being gutted, so to say, it also affected the rest of the crypto markets and the other major, cryptocurrencies as well. I think a lot of this, I think society in general is a lot more connected than we realize or even like to admit as well.
Yeah, I believe I personally love the concept of McLuhan, Marshall McLuhan, because he believes that the world is a huge village, to be honest. Because
Yeah.
it starts one yard, just, I know, like old lady says to another old lady, crypto market is going to crash. Oh, really? I'm going to tell it to my relatives. Let's
Oh,
start. Because,
yeah.
yes, it always starts that way, to be honest. And yeah, speaking about the situation with Luna, I personally, if Ukraine and the situation in Ukraine, even though it was so stressful and keeps, and the situation is going on, it keeps going on, and it's stressful and it's harmful and it's terrific. It's terrible. It's terrible in general. Um, Even though it was like a stressful event, it was a huge driver for mass adoption, and we even
Right.
wrote articles on that topic because I seriously believe that crisis sometimes can accelerate progress, like any war. It happens historically that way. But yeah, that situation with Luna shows one thing that remains the same: that people are still more controlled by emotions more than by their desire to profit, because investing has nothing to do with panicking. And
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, it's a huge obstacle on our way to mass adoption, just because until people are able to divide and to separate information and to look like critically at all this information, we're going to get through such crisis like each year maybe, or each 4 years, because it's like it's generally it's a huge lesson for all crypto market
Right.
players. And on our side, TechWaves, it's not about PR. It's not only about PR. It's also about enlightenment, because many of our mates and relatives and friends in Russia and Eastern European countries are not really familiar with the concept of crypto, because for them it's just another source of maybe profiting. But we'd like to enlighten people and to show them another side, to show them how to deal with their investment, to deal how to take everything, how to look at all situation different ways when it comes to business, when it comes to private finance and investing. So now we are partially focused on sharing our experience of dealing with that crisis and sharing our experience as crypto investors, how we act in that situation. We even shared some strategies that could be helpful in that situation with our
Right.
friends who are just beginners in the crypto market. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's about psychology.
Yeah, and I'd like to add about market, crypto market. If you notice that most investors in the market, crypto market, are not professional investors. So
Right.
people guided by emotions, and professional investor, they not emotional people. They wait their
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
their money. So
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And I think if you pick up many, if not most, trading books, they will often say you could say the markets, whether it's crypto, whether it's traditional equities, really guided by two emotions: fear and greed. So you
Yeah,
see like things that are going on any given day. Um, it really tells you how emotional and kind of irrational at times a lot of trading is. So, especially with a lot of trends that we see out there, you know, 9 out of 10 people lose money when it comes to investing in the stock market. And I would even imagine even with cryptocurrency, because kind of like what you both touched on, a lot of it is based on emotion. So I think if you see essentially 20 people, or let's say 100 people trading a certain way,
mhm,
that magnifies essentially the next trading that comes after that. So people are seeing that, they're going to think, oh no, the market's going to crash, I better dump everything. And then often sometimes it goes in the opposite direction, and those people are really angry because they could have made money and instead they lost it. So yeah, there is there's certainly a lot of that. And you both made a good point earlier about how a lot of progress or advancement, especially when it comes to technology, comes out of very very difficult times. And I'm a huge history nerd, so I'll throw this one out there. So one of the biggest technological advancements that came out of, let's say, the end of World War One was actually plastic surgery. So when veterans from all over were coming
Yeah.
back home, and many of them were disfigured, either from gunshot wounds. And by the way, even in World War One, people were still using kind of like military knives and swords, because a lot of it was trenches that they were fighting in.
Yeah.
There had to have been a way to essentially deal with a lot of the physical and mental trauma at the time. So towards the end of World War One, the beginnings of plastic surgery were created to essentially, rebuild essentially, people's, faces and, limbs and things like that. And if you look at how that industry has transformed, modern society, as time goes on, that is probably one of the more poignant examples that comes to mind, because something that was originally created as a very very important necessity, to save lives, but also b kind of restore a lot of these veterans coming back, has now really become a modern staple and a modern kind of cornerstone of pop culture, and you could say uh, health and beauty and the cosmetic industry, as well. And another one is the internet, originally
Mhm.
used as essentially as a military database and tool. And
Yeah,
if you look
yeah.
at the way,
I personally like this story of Enigma, and
right?
I personally
Yes.
adore this film with Benedict Cumberbatch as the
Yeah.
main character. I just love this movie, and I understand that it all started with it all started at hard times when people were trying to reveal the secrets of some of technology of AI. Back then they tried to protect
Right.
others, they tried to predict if these I know these if
That's
this
like early
code is
machine
going.
learning type of stuff with Enigma. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see, it all started back then, and we've come a long way. It all started with Enigma, and now we have Twitter. So
Right.
even
Yeah.
individuals
There you
have
go.
power. Yeah, and even individuals have a huge power to change the situation. So speaking about crypto, what I say is the best solution in these new realities to start with your own investments. So, for example, what we do with Sonia, we hodl until until the world ends, and this is
Nice.
Warren Buffett's strategy. And
Yeah.
maybe we're soulmates in these terms with Warren Buffett, just because he started investing. I don't remember the exact date, but it was like in 40s. It was back in like 1943, and he started investing back then, and he
Oh
just
yeah.
kept
I'm pretty sure he
investing.
saved every
Yeah,
nickel from his childhood. I've read a lot about
yes,
Warren Buffett,
yes,
so
yes. And
yeah. Okay. Oh, I think.
Oh,
Oh, did we just lose Nika?
yeah.
All right. Well. All right. We'll. Yeah. We'll give her a
I
moment
think
to.
it's a bad connection on her side.
Okay. And by the way, I'm jealous. You're in beautiful Montenegro right now. So, I mean,
Yeah.
even just from the background, I just hear
That's,
birds
that's
chirping and
my
it's totally
background.
sunny. I am very jealous. Yes. Looks beautiful over there. So, I
You,
think you
you
have a lot of
know
that
the-
nice, like, Mediterranean weather, and probably the food is amazing as well.
yeah, yeah, a special meat and cheese.
Oh, okay. I'll have to add Montenegro to my bucket list of places to go to. I'm going to Berlin in a few weeks, actually, for the Blockchain Oracle Summit. I was going to say, if I had more time, if I could make a little detour to Montenegro, oh,
You're always
and
welcome.
relax there. Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And you're
I'm
back.
sorry. I'm sorry for my internet connection. It
No,
ended
no
me
worries.
at the moment when when I was going to share like an excellent story. So his investing strategy helped him to get through successfully through many crises, like in 70s and 90s.
Right.
at the beginning of this century, 2008. And if many people apply this concept, if they try to start acting the same way, or I don't say that's this is the only perfect strategy, because in that case traders would not exist or they wouldn't be working at all. But
Right.
maybe sometimes it's better to, if would I say that every person is capable of changing his or her whole life. And if people were more motivated by their own decisions than by like the overall market situation, it would help market a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And Warren Buffett is a great example. And, I actually have some of his books as well. And one of the great characteristics, and I guess you could say qualities he is extremely patient. And he's obviously been trading really since the beginning of a lot of our modern trading as far as how everything is played out. And I never got the impression he was motivated by either fear or greed when he came up with his strategies and, companies to invest in and companies to buy out. Everything seems very, very well planned out. And I would even say tactical on his part as well. And I think more people can certainly learn from that, kind of being able to detach your emotions from trading, for better or for worse, by the way, because I think even a lot of times, people get a little too scared of the short-term results. So let's say if you otherwise made a great investment, but let's say the following week the price dipped maybe about a third, most people are just going to essentially dump their position, so to say. And you look at Bitcoin. I mean, how many up and downs has Bitcoin had for the past 12 years? And also, you look at how wealthy a lot of the major and original hodlers were as well. They still held on despite kind of that roller coaster of price movement and volatility. So there's a lot to be said about that. So it almost kind of tells you, don't do what everybody else is doing, because most people are just going to react immediately the moment they see something. And then sometimes you miss out on a lot of good opportunities that way.
Yeah, maybe the most maybe the best thing we could learn from Warren Buffett is the idea that the world may end, but it's enough for Warren Buffett if Warren Buffett stays. So he
Right.
relies on himself, and that's what we should
Right.
learn, because really it's a good example that you show now that uh, I really imagine how stressed those people who, for example, bought Bitcoin back, I don't know, like in maybe 2011,
Right.
and then they just dropped it and just sold, and they like, okay, gosh, it's not going to work out in any way. I should probably invest. I don't know, like in maybe S&P 500, but maybe S&P 500 is not the best case because
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Especially
yeah,
especially
it's a good
nowadays.
example because it's actually they could profit from that, because there are many other things, just like maybe classic banking, and then these bank goes bankrupt, and then they just like 2 or like 10 years pass, and then they let's take a look at what's happening with that Bitcoin. Maybe it even that doesn't even exist, and they just search on the internet and just look at the quotes and see what they lost because of their impatience. This is a good lesson.
Right. Yeah, it certainly is. And if I could find this, I'll send it to both of you. So there's this one Twitter user, and what this person does is post, you could say, various tweets from people for the past 10 years who essentially bought into Bitcoin and dumped it earlier. So it's like, they'll post some tweet from some guy in 2013. Yeah, Bitcoin's garbage, selling all of it today. And then, kind of retweets it, and things like that, especially like when it was doing well. Like I think last year, I think the highest Bitcoin got was like 68,000. So this user was posting a lot of those old tweets around then. Yeah, Bitcoin's garbage. I'm dumping it now. He was like, bought it at $5. It's $2 now. Forget it. So it's it's pretty funny. And yeah, I'd hate to be those. I'd hate to be one of those early buyers of Bitcoin who didn't hold on to it I would certainly be pretty angry. Even despite the fact that Bitcoin took a big, beating, so to say, it's still worth a lot. It's still very valuable, regardless. So, yeah, like I said, if I can find that, I'll be sure to send that both your ways.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
pretty funny looking at those.
I would like to take a look
Yeah.
at it in the evening, maybe. It would be just a huge meme, and I adore memes. So
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. Like, it's essentially like these memes that are created based on these like old tweets of people who owned Bitcoin and then they dumped it very early, and then it's kind of like a very kind of like funny piece of content that's circulated because then people comment like, wow, this person's an idiot. you know, you'll you'll kind of see it once I find it. But yeah, I it's I
Adam,
think
I
I think the
believe
Warren
that
Buffett approach is good.
this is what happens with pretty much any good thing in the world, because back then we're now close to Serbia, and one
Yeah.
of the main historical figures in Serbia is Nikola Tesla. Some people
Yeah,
back
that's right.
then didn't believe in electricity, and they tend to say he is a madman. So yeah, that's what happens with all good things. First they criticized, and we know it even on our own experience, because Sonia was always criticized for her decision to start her own business. Oh gosh, what are you going to do in that industry? It's going to end anyway, and one day, and then you're going to lose all of your money. It's better to be working on your like, standard position. It's better to entrust your boss with your
Right.
destiny.
Right with your destiny. Yeah.
It's way more
Sure.
reliable than I don't know, invest in crypto or trying to start your own
Yeah, but
thing, or
it's
not.
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I heard what you said as far as I guess what people were telling Sonia. And it's funny. Over time, it actually makes the risk worth taking now to go out and do your own thing, because as time goes on and you look at the historical layoffs across continents, there's certainly in many ways a less you could say there is less job security in many ways. Like, back in, let's say, maybe the era of my parents and let's say yours, it
Mhm.
was still relatively common people to work at one company for like 20 years. Nowadays, you don't
The
see that
time
at all. Nobody does that. Nobody does that anymore. So, especially with the way the economy has gone for everybody, it actually makes the risk worth taking. If you have a good idea and if you're prepared and if you've, at least have enough information and at least faith and confidence in your own abilities, then why the hell not do your own thing at this point? And in fact, in times of uncertainty, that's actually some of the best times to actually take those chances. Because when most people are kind of losing their shit, most people are panicking, it's an opportunity for people who are calm and prepared to make their move and build something.
By the way, regarding 20 years, when I worked in big IT companies, I saw the people who worked there 20 years, and I saw how new CEO quit these people, and
Sure.
they didn't know what they can do now, because they work here 20 years and now they on the street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of that has happened here as well. And by the way, I'm even talking about like the major, I'm talking about like blue chip type companies too, where they've historically had like these 20-year type of, employees who have essentially stayed, and have been very much a part of these companies. And, during layoffs, it's kind of like, yeah, well, listen, sorry, go figure it out yourself. And
Yeah.
a lot of times those people don't have a lot of options afterwards, especially
Yeah.
because if you're attached to one company for a long time as well, and then you keep in mind how different and changing the you could say the economy is, because of, let's say, you've stayed at one company for such a long time, you know you essentially put yourself in a position where you may have not have had the opportunity to work on additional skills to make you competitive once you've gotten fired. You know, I mean, and
Mhm.
that causes a lot of problems for people and their families and their physical and and mental health and things like that. So, I think there's a lot of factors as far as why that is the case and why people don't work at companies for such longer periods of time. I think nowadays, there's been a fair amount of research behind this, but I think the average tenure for a lot of people is like 2 to 3 years, to be honest. Whereas, let's say 20, 30 years ago, like I said, 10 plus years was kind of normal and a lot more common, to say the least. Nowadays, it's kind of like if you're at somewhere for like, 20 plus years, it's like rare. Like, really? It's almost kind of hard to, it's almost like really hard to believe, as far as hearing that. So yeah, like, kind of to your point, Sonia, a lot of that happens. And, even, especially even here in the United States, you have like these mass layoffs of people who've been at one place for 20 years, and it really destroys their lives. Truly.
Companies want young blood.
Right. Right.
So,
I also
Yeah.
noticed how
There's that.
fundamentally our lives and our parents' lives have changed during like 3 decades, because uh, I think like the world before that, the world hadn't seen such progress in such short term. And now it's the main principle. I mean, not only for businesses, but also for like any individuals who like to not only like unveil their potential, but also to be less or more sure about their
You say,
future. Oh, hi.
oh, this is my son. This is the other co-host here. You
Yeah,
wanted to say hi.
hi. Thank you for joining. If somebody is interested in our conversation, it's a good indicator. So,
Yes, already have a fan here. My 4-year-old son Christopher. Anyway, please
so
continue.
yeah, and so it's a good principle to apply in one's life, that sometimes you should be faster that time. As you said absolutely correctly, you should always be ready to study more, to look
Yeah.
for new skills to apply, and yeah, and even even regarding crypto market. So to be able to stay on track, you should be constantly evolving, and you should
Yeah.
also be constantly improving your psychology, because you should be at the same time quite critical. You should be able
Right.
to be able to mitigate risk. You should be able to find this risk, but at the same
Yeah.
time you should be optimistic. So maybe this is a sort of internal conflict for many people in this day and age. And yeah, and it touches all spheres of life, investing, work, and
Right.
communications, whatever.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And whether it's equities like the traditional stock market or crypto, a lot of the fundamental principles still apply. And you look, even in crypto markets, the volatility and price movements are still very, very driven by fear and by greed. Especially like last year, if you recall, a lot of those meme coins that were coming out. I think had to have been like the middle of the summer, early fall, but I just remember looking at crypto news and all I saw were meme coins, and I saw all the people that were jumping onto these almost different variations of like Dogecoin. So you had like Shiba Inu coin, you had like Saitama Inu coin, you had Floki Inu, like all these strange names. But unfortunately, because like they were they were showing like these early returns of like 1,000, 3,000%, 10,000%. And then you see people jump on after the fact. A lot of them, a lot, if not most people, lost money from that. And a lot of that is fear of missing out. It's like, oh no, like these meme coins are making so much money. If I don't get in, I'm going to miss out. And nowadays, like you hear almost nothing about a lot of those, meme coins from last year as well. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I do find them entertaining. So when I saw them come out, they at least yeah, I know, right, Chris? When I saw them come out, like they were pretty interesting, but
Mhm.
it's I would imagine a lot of those price movements and pump and dumps. I think, like the stock market, it's largely driven probably by a lot of insiders and whales who are making some sort of power play as well. So
Mhm.
still vulnerable to that, just like anywhere else.
Yeah, people should not. Yeah, maybe. I also we both Sonia like this movie. It's called Big Short, and
Yes, I love that
yeah,
movie. Yeah,
it's a legendary
Michael
movie.
Burry. Yeah,
Yeah,
Christian Bale
I
did a great
certainly
job in
enjoy
that
this
movie
movie.
too.
I think I watched it like 5 times or even more, and it starts, with a good quote. I remember maybe it's Mark Twain. It starts with a quote the most dangerous thing. I would just try to rephrase it to be maybe more easy comprehended.
Sure.
The most dangerous thing is not the one we know, but the one we don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe the worst part is that we believe that we know everything. So
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're
people should
talking
not
about.
be thinking that they are clever enough to like overlord the market. So maybe it's better to step aside to watch this market like being crazy, going up and down, and just wait, like some maybe Chinese philosopher, and just wait until it all goes back to normal.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a very specific point in that movie. So if you recall, Michael Burry was really the one, you could say, investment banker that predicted and saw the subprime real estate markets crashing, and everybody thought he was
Mhm.
crazy, including his own boss. So if you
Yeah,
recall, he was going to
yeah,
all of these different, essentially investment banks, essentially buying these like almost like these securities from them, essentially
yeah. And he
promising him
came
a
to these
return
banks, and they
when
was
they
like, "Oh,
crashed.
God, it's
And they
crazy."
all thought that like they were ripping him off, like, oh, this guy's insane, like he's an idiot, like, we're gonna make a killing off of his firm. And then you saw what happened, and nobody
Yeah.
believed him. And what was even weird about that? Nobody even tried to understand what he was talking about as well. A lot of it seemed like a lot of the bigger players really thought this can never crash. This will always be okay. And then look what happened. And I'm pretty sure Michael Burry is still doing excellent for himself. And I followed him from time to time, and a lot of predictions he's made as far as trends. And I know he doesn't get too specific a lot of times. It's almost like cryptic when he talks about certain things. A lot of the things he said has turned out to be right, to say the least. So, it's kind of always good to keep an open mind, and don't always think things stay the same. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Real life always shows us.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's a good habit. It's a good habit to apply to sometimes rewatch this movie when you think that your stocks are booming, your account is just constantly growing.
Right,
When you just think, oh, it's going to be always that way. I'm so lucky. Fortune is on my side.
right,
Each time you think that way, just rewatch this movie, and it will remind
right,
you about the right things that you should keep in mind.
right. Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to consider any type of possibility, even when things are going well for you. Like, I think it's very easy when, let's say, things are going well, and let's say in the case of a lot of people in the Big Short, your brokerage account is just swelling. Let's say you're doing well. It's always those type of situations where people miss the writing on the wall. And then when it hits, they're kind of the worst off in many ways because kind of refuse to see it. There's overconfident or arrogant or whatnot, but it's easy to be comfortable, and it's even easier to get more comfortable when things are good. But unfortunately, that's kind of where a lot of the danger lies as well. So, there's a lot of great lessons to take away, from that movie, to say the least. But also, you saw kind of how dangerous a lot of those investments were in the early 2000s as well, with subprime mortgages, and you had like collateral debt obligations, and people were buying those, and they were actively being sold and dumped in the market. It was like debt wrapped around worse debt, and even that terrible debt was wrapped around catastrophic debt, and people were buying these like like it was like any type of either equity or like an ETF or things like that. And you always got to do your research. Like for instance, I don't think Warren Buffett was buying any of that stuff. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he wasn't buying CDOs. No way. I mean, who were the people that were buying CDOs at the time? Unfortunately, they were regular retail investors who were being cold called by essentially, financial advisors and stockbrokers and those type of people. And you look at any of the whales, I don't think any of those people were buying those. I think it's almost it's very important to just keep your eyes open and kind of see what type of people are also buying these as well. And if Warren Buffett is, let's say, going long in something, or if he's bullish in something, it is I know, right, Chris? It's worth paying attention.
Yeah, yeah, and with any, like, both crypto market and classic finance, at the same time you can be overwhelmed and you can panic and like panically in panic selling like some of your crypto assets, but at the same time you can be optimistically and over optimistically buying some stuff
Right.
in real estate. So both options so both options are available. And yeah, talking about whales, they know what they know, and it's
Right.
important to keep it in mind that there are always people who know more. So yeah, as I said, it's not a good idea to try to overlord the market. But it's better to overlord your own panic and your emotions.
Yeah,
And this
absolutely.
part is beautiful. Yeah,
I agree.
beautiful
So, like,
part.
on an ending note, um, as far as like conferences, events, um, is TechWaves going to be appearing at anything this year? Because I also know you're also based in New York City, so you have
Yeah.
like NFT NYC coming up and a few other things. So, are you both going to be making appearances anytime soon at any of these conferences?
Yeah, we are choosing now some conferences, but we definitely want to be on Web Summit in Portugal,
Oh, very
uh,
nice.
and in November, and maybe in we will visit some conferences in June or July in
Awesome.
Europe.
Yeah, maybe Barcelona or Paris because yeah, it's also part of our job. We're constantly on lookout for some like worth time and money events, and we're also after coronavirus crisis, it became suddenly clear that nothing can replace offline communication,
Yeah,
and it's one of the most precious things, and it's efficient for work, and it's the best way for efficient partnership. And
absolutely.
that's why we're now looking for different events, and we're open to any suggestions. And our main focuses are on blockchain, on NFT, and what I'm personally interested in all conferences regarding crypto regulation, because what I'd like to know how now authorities take these crypto trends, because um, like to see how the situation is changing uh, from the inside. Because I see that lately FCA and Security Exchange Commission, they got slower on these tightening crypto regulations, like they
Right.
also tried to wait to make the right decision, because a year ago it was completely different. And you remember, Sonia, how things were going very very fast, particularly with Binance. Like each day brought some negative news regarding crypto regulation. It was either going to be prohibited or strictly regulated, and now the situation is completely different. So it's
Yeah,
also
it
good
was
for
summer, I think, last
Yeah.
summer.
yeah, yeah, it was back in 2021. And if something changed, it's definitely worth examining why and probably how.
Yeah. Yeah, regulation is going to be one of the bigger either barriers or obstacles, or however you want to look at it, over the next few years. And I think a lot of the dilemma is going to be how to really properly articulate how to regulate it, and almost even to how to articulate the nature of these assets, so to say. Like, how do you regulate an NFT? How do you regulate the metaverse? And with cryptocurrency, some are essentially, you could say, assets in of themselves, and some of them are essentially, uh, you know, DApp platforms like Ethereum, for instance. So, can you treat Ethereum the same way as Bitcoin? Bitcoin is really, right, Chris? Yeah, but Bitcoin is really an asset in of itself. Ethereum is in many ways a programming platform to create dApps off of. So, if you're, let's say, a lobbyist on behalf of Ethereum, you know, you would have a very strong argument in saying, well, this doesn't necessarily fit the same mold or the same type of pattern as a crypto asset per se, like Bitcoin, so to say, because even though, let's say, even though Bitcoin and Ethereum both, let's say, accrue value based on market conditions, but Ethereum, through the Ethereum virtual machine, this is also a
Mhm.
software to build things off of as well. And these are, to build programs, to build coding, to build all types of things. So, if you want to have an argument to maybe, let's say, maybe Ethereum should be regulated less than Bitcoin, there might be a few things to work with in that case. Hypothetically speaking, anyway.
Yeah, more than other things, I adore, talks about NFT regulation, because
Yeah.
NFT is an asset that even sold in like Christie's and Sotheby's auctions. And if ultra high net worth people are seeking to buy such assets, if they believe in the concept of NFT in art, maybe it means something. And this is definitely a thing that you should first examine, and only after that regulate. And yeah, it's not completely clear how exactly, because crypto market is so much filled with different types of assets, and they have all
Yeah.
different functions. And yeah, the same rules with, the rules you try to apply, or the terms you try to impose on Bitcoin, 100% cannot be, for example, applied to Ethereum.
Right. Yeah, because they're both, functionally, very different. And, in fact, many of these, coins in general, have a lot of, differences, between them. I mean, even, something like Solana or Polygon, same thing. These are also blockchains that you can build things off of and build things on top of, so it
Mhm.
kind of makes you wonder, like, how is whether it's the SEC
Uh,
body,
we can hear you.
whatever they
Yeah.
come up with, it's going to have to be very, very specific and nuanced for it to work. Otherwise, there's constantly going to be a tug of war between, you could say, the private, decentralized, crypto industry and regulators. So
Um,
those are my 2 cents in that. So it's going to be very interesting over the next few years. But listen, Nika, Sonia, it was an absolute pleasure having you both on today. Certainly got to discuss and learn a lot, and I'm very excited to see what you both have in store with TechWaves for this year. And by the way, whenever you two get into New York, please give me a shout. I'm located
Perfect.
up here. I'll be doing a few events with various groups and other individuals and influencers as well. So maybe if there's some synergies, or maybe there's some space for collaboration, perhaps we can discuss that as well.
yeah. Thank you. Of
Yeah,
course.
in
You
the
can go.
summer we are 100% going to stay in Montenegro. Not just because of Vitalik Buterin, who is now a
Oh,
citizen of Montenegro. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're in Budva, and we do believe that we're going to meet him. So we believe in
oh
fortune,
wow!
and we believe that one day we walk on the
Take
beach
pictures.
there to share his knowledge about Ethereum, and this is going to be a life-changing moment. People are even buying real estate for crypto here. So this country is quite
Yeah,
overlooked in terms of crypto. Just believe us. But yeah,
yeah.
maybe in autumn we're going to be back in New York.
Yeah. By the way, I don't blame you for trying to stay in Montenegro as long as possible. I was just telling Sonia before when you got cut off quickly. All right, Chris. It looks beautiful over there, to say the least. You have like good food and a nice Mediterranean weather there. I'm kind of wondering, like, what the hell am I doing up here right now?
The second you land in Montenegro, you can call us. We're always here. We'll show you where to eat the best meat here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to Berlin. I was mentioning before, I'm going to Berlin in a few weeks. And I was gonna say, if certainly if I had more time, I'd like to take a little detour, like
We can hear you.
Chris likes to take part in conversation. Yeah.
this off. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, Chris, you turned off the microphone. That's awesome. No, I was just saying, I'm going to Berlin in a few weeks, but
Yeah.
if I had more time, I'd love to take a little detour to somewhere nice like Montenegro with the, that really great Mediterranean weather and good food and whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
I know. It's cheap prices, good food, good weather, and low crypto regulation and low taxes. It's like perfect place.
Mountains and
Wow.
sea in the same
Yeah.
place.
Seriously, I should move then. New York and New Jersey is the total opposite of that.
Okay. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you so much for coming on, and I hope you two have a great time in Montenegro. I hope you both meet Vitalik Buterin. Please keep me posted when you do. Post something, and be sure to share with me as well, and I'll definitely recirculate it
You'll
on.
be the first person to know about our meeting with Vitalik. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, please let me know, and yeah, when you happen to get back to New York in the fall, perhaps give me a shout.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank
Of
you.
course.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Have a
you
nice
coming on to today's
day.
episode, and I'll talk to you both soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.